When I was in my 20s, I was driving to play a gig 2 hours out of Melbourne in a tiny Ford Laser packed full of drums when the car overheated. The band were already on stage, and I didn't think I was going to make it. It wasn't until years later that I realized what was actually driving me that night to keep going. G'day guys, Daniel Thomas here. I am a storyteller who shares reflections and insights from my own wild experiences. Thank you so much for tuning in. This story takes place back in the early 2000s when I was a drummer in a Melbourne indie band called Loomset. We had a show 2 hours out of Melbourne in a country town called Shepparton at a venue called the Yahoo Bar. It made sense for us to do these country gigs because often there were more people there than just playing to the bar staff at pubs in Melbourne. They always gave us a meal, a hotel, and a packed club, so it was worth the 2 hour drive. It was a Friday, it was scorching hot. I finished work and I loaded up my tiny Ford Laser full of drums and hit the open road. The city skyline faded in the rearview mirror. Scattered gum trees cruised past across the land where outlaw Ned Kelly used to roam with a tin bucket on his head. And it was so awesome just to hit the open road with this pre-gig excitement for the gig. I always loved the fact that anything could happen that night. We might get discovered, we might get a record deal. I really felt alive doing these shows as a young bloke on the drums. About halfway to the venue, an hour in, I'm cruising along and smoke starts to bellow from under the front bonnet or hood. And I'm like, oh no, the car's overheating. So I pull up on the side of the road. There's no street lights. It's pitch black. There's just a disgruntled cow mooing at me in a nearby paddock. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I knew that if I called the RACV, the Australian Roadside Assistance, it was going to take too long and I wouldn't make the gig. I didn't know how the car engine was going to start, so I thought I've just got to let the engine cool down. As I went to douse the engine with the only bottle of water I had, I was wearing flip-flops and I stubbed my toe, which I think the cow found kind of amusing. And I doused the engine in water and just waited for it to cool down and hoped and prayed to the rock gods that I could restart it. As I was sitting there, the guitarist called and he's like, we're already on stage. Where the heck are you? And then the phone cut out. My battery died. The level of panic that kicked in, the internal panic that kicked in was a complete inner meltdown, but I just had to focus on trying to get the bloody car to start. So after about 10 minutes of just letting it cool, I sat in the driver's seat and I slowly turned the ignition. It started to roll over and then bang, it kicked into gear and I took off, left the cow behind, howled out the window like a dog at the moon because I was so excited. And I thought I literally have to floor it without breaking the speed limit all the way to the gig in the country town. So I fly over this bridge. I'm probably about 10 minutes from the venue and smoke starts to rise again from the hood. And I'm like, I think the engine's just going to blow. I hit the accelerator. I see the lights of the main town. I swing a hard right into the main drag in the town. And I'm not kidding. There was a loud bang under the hood. And as an atomic cloud of smoke rose into the sky, I literally rolled the car to a stop outside the venue. As the smoke cleared, there was a queue of indie kids waiting to get in, just looking at me in complete shock. I grabbed the drums. I was holding them, balancing them sort of like a tiered wedding cake. The venue was underground, so I had to carry them down all these stairs. And the club was full, packed to the rafters. The band were already on stage. I parted the crowd with the drums. I think the sound mixer was pretty annoyed. He said something to me which I didn't even comprehend or fathom. I plonked the drums on stage, set them up in world record time, and then just smashed my way through the set, fueled by sweat and gasoline. When we finished the set, I was so relieved. I think it might have been my birthday. I can't quite remember, but I was so relieved that I ran straight to the bar and I literally put my head under the beer tap and just guzzled the beer straight from the tap, which was very nice of the bar staff to allow me to do that. So that's what happened. At the end of the night, back at the hotel, I basically fell into the hotel pool. Cliche, trying to be a rock star type stuff, was dragged out of the pool by my bandmates and drove back to Melbourne, leaving my car abandoned to get towed. Drove back to Melbourne with the band, squashed in between them in a pair of tight, soggy jeans. They weren't too happy, and I think we had another gig a couple of days later. The moral of the story, when I think about it, is what was actually driving me that night. The show obviously had to go on, and I was determined to get there. But I remember the inner meltdown I was having was really driven by guilt. I had massive fears of letting people down. My driving force that night was I didn't want to let my bandmates down. I didn't want to let the owners of the club down. And I didn't want to let the 300 or so kids who'd paid money to come and see us down. So it was all about not letting people down. That was my driving force. The energy and the drive when the car wouldn't start, I could have just given up, but I was driven by that, call it internal engine of not wanting to let others down. So I'm wondering if there's a time when you've had something driving you along or things have gone to complete shit and you've somehow found a way through. I honestly thought I wasn't going to get there. Like I thought this is just not going to happen, but it's just lucky the engine kicked over. If you've had some kind of moment like that, I would love to hear it. This is a tiny channel that I'm trying to grow. If I've earned a like or subscription, I greatly appreciate it. Till next time, guys.